All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Always a pleasure to be back.
Today, we're tackling a topic that I know a lot of you are really curious about.
Oh, yeah, this is a big one.
It's asthma.
Absolutely. And not just the basics.
Right. We're going deep, cellular level stuff. We're going to unpack all those intricate processes that are happening in your body when you're dealing with asthma.
We'll break it down in a way that hopefully makes it really clear and memorable.
Exactly. And our guide for this journey, we're going to be using insights from Dr. Kucha's work on asthma pathogenesis.
Great stuff. Really gets to the heart of it.
Yeah. So by the end of this, you're going to have like this almost visual understanding of how asthma actually develops.
Almost like you can picture the cells talking to each other.
Exactly.
Okay.
So to kick things off, let's think about your immune system.
Okay.
You've got these T helper cells.
T cells. Right.
T cells for short.
Yeah.
They're like the conductors of your immune system's orchestra.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Two main types, T1H and T2H. Now, they both come from the same parent cell, but they have totally different jobs.
Yeah, they kind of specialize, right? Like T1H cells. Those are your frontline fighters. Like
Yeah.
they're out there tackling microbes, right? The bacteria, viruses, all that stuff.
The bad guys.
Exactly. And they signal those B cells, which you can think of as like the antibody factories.
Okay, so the B cells are making antibodies.
Right. And T1H cells are like, hey, B cells, pump out those IgM and IgG antibodies. We need them.
Got it. And that's like the basic defense system, just general immune response.
Exactly. Always ready to go. But then we've got our T2H cells. These guys are kind of a different story. They're really important when we're talking about allergic asthma.
So they're the allergic response specialists.
Yeah, you could say that. So they tell the B cells to produce this specific antibody called IgE.
IgE, okay.
And here's the thing. In folks with allergic asthma, their immune system tends to lean heavily towards this T2H response. It's like their bodies are almost like primed for an allergic reaction, always ready to overreact.
Interesting. Okay, so that kind of sets the stage for what happens next.
Exactly. And that's where we get to this thing called the allergic cascade.
Okay, the allergic cascade. Let's break that down.
All right.
So it all starts with sensitization.
First exposure.
First time you encounter something. So picture this. You're walking through a field, right? All these flowers. And you breathe in some pollen. That pollen, in this case, is an allergen.
The trigger.
Right. And your body's like, whoa, what is that? And it gets picked up by these cells, antigen-presenting cells, or APCs.
Scouts.
APCs, yeah. And they're like the detectives of your immune system, right?
Gathering evidence.
They go around, they collect the evidence, and then they show to the rookie T cells.
Like, hey, check this out. Have you ever seen this before?
Exactly. Now, it's important to note, not all APCs are the same.
Right, right. You've got your dendritic cells. These guys are crucial. They're the ones who really push those T cells to become those Th2 cells we were talking about.
So they're kind of like the boot camp instructors of the immune system.
Yeah, getting them all riled up, ready for action.
Okay. So now we've got all these Th2 cells pumped and ready to go. And thanks to their instructions, those B cells, they're cranking out IgE antibodies.
Like crazy.
Yeah. And these IgE antibodies, they're like little, what's a good analogy? They're like those little sticky hand toys. They go and they attach themselves to mast cells.
Which are just waiting there.
Right. Mast cells are kind of like those little, those snap and pop fireworks.
Yeah.
Just waiting for something to set them off.
Yeah, good analogy. And that something is re-exposure to that same allergen.
Okay, so you walk by those flowers again a few weeks later.
Bam.
That pollen gets in your system. This time it binds to those IgE antibodies that are stuck to the mast cells.
And boom, degranulation.
Degranulation, it's like a microscopic explosion.
It's crazy fast. Suddenly, all these inflammatory mediators come pouring out. We're talking histamine, PGD2, LTC4, and all sorts of cytokines. These are the bad boys that really cause those classic asthma symptoms.
So it's not the pollen itself that's causing the symptoms. It's what the body releases in response to the pollen.
Exactly.
So let's break down what these mediators do, because that's really where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely. So, you know that feeling of tightness in your chest during an asthma attack? That's histamine. It's causing your airways to constrict, making it hard to breathe.
Like squeezing a hose.
Yeah, exactly. Then you've got PGD2 and LTC4. They're the ones making the lining of your airways swell up, making things even tighter.
And the cytokines.
Ah, the cytokines. They're like the gossips. They spread the word, call in more inflammatory cells, and just amplify everything.
It's amazing how such a tiny thing can trigger such a huge reaction in the body.
It really is. But wait, there's more. We've got the late phase reaction, too.
Oh, right. We can't forget about that. So the early phase is like the initial shock. And then
The late phase is the
the
aftermath.
long, drawn-out battle.
Exactly. This one kicks in a few hours after the initial exposure.
So you've had your initial reaction, you think you're okay.
And then, bam, it hits you again.
What's happening during this late phase?
So basically, your body's sending in the reinforcements. White blood cells, those are also called leukocytes.
Oh,
They flood the area and release even more of those pesky inflammatory mediators.
so even more inflammation.
Oh, yeah. And this can go on for a while, causing more damage to the airways.
And it's not just inflammation.
Oh, no, you're right. You also get something called goblet cell hyperplasia.
Goblet cell what?
Hyperplasia, it's a mouthful, I know.
So what is that?
Well, goblet cells are the ones that make mucus.
Oh, okay.
And during this late phase, they go a little nuts. They start producing way too much mucus. So now you've got this thick, sticky mucus clogging up your airways on top of all that inflammation.
Double whammy.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, those tiny little hairs in your airways, the cilia, they normally help sweep away mucus, but they get bogged down and can't do their job properly.
Everything's just kind of stuck in there.
Pretty much.
Wow. It's incredible how much is happening behind the scenes,
Right.
This whole cascade, it really explains why asthma attacks can be so debilitating.
Absolutely. And we also have to think about the long-term consequences.
Right, because this isn't just a one-time thing.
Nope. All that chronic inflammation can lead to airway remodeling. That's where the walls of your airways actually thicken and become less flexible over time, so you're more prone to future attacks and your lung function might even decline.
So knowing all of this stuff going on, what are some of the things that researchers are looking at in terms of new treatments?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? And there are some really promising avenues.
Like what? What are some of the things they're focusing on?
Well, one big area is trying to prevent that initial sensitization from happening in the first place, especially in kids who are at high risk for developing asthma.
So like if you know a child is genetically predisposed.
Exactly. Or if they have a family history of allergies or asthma, we're trying to figure out ways to modify those early exposures and sort of train their immune systems to react differently.
So interesting. And what about once the cascade has already started? Is there anything that can be done to kind of interrupt that process?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of research in that area as well. Scientists are developing new drugs that target specific mediators, like those cytokines we were talking about.
Okay, so blocking those chemical messengers.
Exactly. The goal is to dampen down that whole inflammatory response.
So less inflammation, less severe symptoms.
That's the hope. There's also a lot of buzz about personalized medicine, tailoring treatments to an individual's specific genes and environment.
So finding the right treatment for the right person.
Exactly. So much potential there.
Well, that's definitely encouraging news for people with asthma. It sounds like there's a lot of hope on the horizon.
Oh, absolutely. The more we understand about the mechanisms behind this complex disease, the better we'll be able to develop effective treatments and make a real difference.
Well, there you have it. Our deep dive into the world of asthma pathogenesis. We covered a lot today.
We did, from those T cells to the cascade to the long-term effects and even new treatments.
I hope this deep dive gave you a better grasp of this incredibly complex condition.
Absolutely. And maybe spark some new questions for you, too.
Exactly. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and as always, thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next deep dive.